Hello, this is Shion Costello here on Alloy Day 23. I'm excited to share my latest purchases from a fabric store that was going out of business here in Chicago. Felt sheets, about 70 cents per sheet. And I also got some real leather crafts, lace, assorted sizes, some thick pieces down here, some thinner pieces up there. So leather's another idea. That actually, shout out to Alex from the workshop series that had that idea to possibly use leather. And then I have an old T-shirt, cotton. I have no idea how that will work. I have a feeling it won't work, but I'm just going to try it anyway because the whole spirit of this is to try different materials that are fabrics for the day and see what comes of it. I have some thoughts, but I'll save them for the end, and we'll see how these experiments go. Okay, just documenting sort of the most basic thing to do is just put this roll of cotton t-shirt onto the mid register in the middle there. It just mutes everything, so even if it really deadens the notes. There's kind of a variability to it, which I don't know. For some effects it could be useful, but I would prefer to have a little more control over like where the harmonics are coming out. Right now they're just kind of wherever they land. It's impossible to actually have this in a shape that catches the right harmonics that you might want. So what happens with that is that certain notes are a little tinier and have a higher harmonic than others, or no harmonic and it's just more deadened. So that's that effect. Yeah. For anything that you kind of place in the middle like that and just kind of let it sit will give you a very variable sound palette for like harmonics that are being parsed out. Even on individual notes, there's 3 strings per note, and it might be at a different angle so that it brings out a harmonic on one of the notes, on one of the strings, I mean, and the other 2 strings don't have it. So there's like a lot of variety that you can't really control in that. I actually really like this more personally, so closer to the tuning pegs. Just kind of have it resting softly here, but before the hammers, and yeah, it kind of has just like a it's a very subtle muting. It almost sounds, what it really sounds like to me actually is it sounds like an upright piano. If you hear that sound, like a practice, even a practice pedal down on and this is what it would sound like. That's what it sounds like with no t-shirt on there. So it just kind of deadens the sound, and I kind of like it. Just playing the same thing so you hear the comparison. I kind of like it because it's all very standardized. The sound is united. It's not as much variability as putting it up there. So just keep that in mind. If you put things closer to the tuning pegs, it's going to come out with a little more of a standardized sound versus in the middle of the soundboard. Here's something by the bridge. By the bridge really deadens the resonance more so than where the tuning pegs are. So you get way little resonance, but you also don't have the harmonics that are being parsed out at different spots. So there's a pro and a con to each placement, each location for placing the t-shirt. you can't really do harmony, which is kind of too bad for the piano. But anyway, those are the three options. Bridge right in the middle, by like in front on top of the soundboard, or by the tuning pegs, and those are the different effects of the t-shirt. So here's first experiments with felt sheets. These are the felt sheets. They're really soft material, and I can tell it just won't do any damage to the instrument. It feels very nice that way. But the other problem is that something that I've been thinking that would be the problem for anything that's fabric related is that it's too light and it's not dense enough to really do much of anything to the strings. So like here's what it sounds like with it on. Here's what it sounds like with it off. It's almost identical. The impact is almost non-existent. And same with this. I wrapped this in I cut a smaller piece, or I cut a long piece, and I tied it on like a knot. That note is not prepared, and this one is. Again, almost no change in the sound. Again, felt sheets lodged between the strings. Almost no change to the sound. So it's not dense enough, it's too light, and it's too soft to do anything to the piano of anything meaningful in terms of preparing the piano with this material. Okay, one possible direction that felt sheets could be useful in, very, very small possibility, but it's a chance for something to be used for felt sheets here. This is like, the felt sheet isn't doing much in terms of sound, but it's acting as a protective layer to the copper wound low strings of the instrument. So these copper wound strings are very delicate because this starts here and you can actually unravel it, or you could scratch it off and scrape it open so that it becomes unraveled, and then you got to redo it all, or it will buzz around and it'll be really loud. So if you don't really want to put much metal on these, and usually a way around it is just to use rubber, or to put rubber and then metal inserted into the rubber so that it's never in contact with these strings. This is an interesting possibility for getting around that, so that you can still have metallic sounds like aluminum foil wrapped in a bolt, brass washers brass washers on a bolt, and then this is a pony bead on a screw. And you don't even have to use brass necessarily in this situation because it's all being protected by the felt sheet. It's just like an idea, but it'd have to be really way more developed to make it work. I'm thinking maybe stuff that actually props up the strings, or it props up the screws, maybe like Play-Doh or something. But the vibration still does make it through the felt a bit. It's just on a very soft level. So if you listen closely, you can hear. So you can hear the tinfoil moving when you play those two strings that are neighboring the screw there. You can't really hear the ponytail beat. You can see it moving. I hear it a little bit, but not much at all. And then finally, the washers are not bad either. Very subtle, and it would have to be developed better so that it could match the power of those low strings. It doesn't work so well here in the middle register. But this is a start of an idea. Like I said, something to prop it up so that it can ring more freely. When these screws are up like this, it moves a lot better. So I think that's the next step. Something like sticky and Play-Doh, that there's something like that I can prop it upright and it would stay in place.
it's still the whole time. The key is that this is being all protected by the felt sheet, so that the Play-Doh too, or anything I use, can be sort of like, yeah, away from the strings, but still being affected by the strings. And you could create a whole model town on top of this felt sheet. So there's a lot of possibilities with that. Okay, here's an effect that I was able to come up with using leather lace assorted sizes. These are little strips. If you see here, there's like a thin edge and then a slightly longer edge. And the sizes are different. These are smaller ones. The size isn't like the same all around, so this cut a little bit unevenly. And so that's really interesting too, actually, to play with the different thicknesses. I have a setup of all the, like basically one long strand. No, actually there's two strands in here, but they're interwoven so that they really won't fall out. If you just put one thing in, like for example right here, this might fall out over time. But when you wind them together like this, it's much harder for them to pop out because they're kind of reinforcing themselves like that. The other option is to do something where you lodge it in this way, sort of, I guess, under, over, under for the 3 strings, under, over, under. Same with these up here. And that keeps them in place because they're kind of like creating an opposing force, or just like a counterbalance to keep it in place and lodged in there so it doesn't pop out or go down, pop downward. So this is a really interesting sound world because I've parsed out very high harmonics there's 2 whole tone scales. So on this whole tone scale, I parsed out the harmonics with much thinner strips of leather. And then here I parsed out more of a muted, consistent sound over all the strings of a slightly thicker strand of leather lace. So here's what the thicker strand of leather lace sounds like, the one in the middle. And that's all with the sustain pedal held down, so you can see that's quite muted. Here is the other whole tone scale that's on these thinner strands that are parsing out a harmonic, and they go up here too because you run out of space here because of the hammers. You don't want to have that be where the hammer's hitting because it won't do anything and it might mess up the hammer. So I moved it to up there, I shifted it, but it's still parsing out the same harmonics. It's 3 octaves up. And then you could hear it from the higher ones, the ones up there. Hopefully the audio is picking up that harmonics. So here's what all the harmonics sound like. Kind of like a high alien-ish sound. I guess everything sounds like an alien when you think about it. But that high, very clear harmonic, very magical, I guess you could say. So those are contrasting, things that a leather lace can do, this material. Just some ideas. Thicker, strung together in the middle, wound together on all the strings. Thinner pieces lodged between on a sort of a under over under pattern, parsing out the harmonic of 3 octaves up of the note. They all are very secure and in place, playing loud or soft. Okay, that wraps up the Alloy Day 23 experiments with fabric. Focus was fabric. I looked at what could be done with felt sheets, leather in lace, like strips, cut into small strips, and a t-shirt, cotton. And I think a lot of really interesting things came from this. The most fascinating, probably 2 things that I found was working with leather in small strips, cutting them into even smaller strips, and lodging them in between the strings in a under-over-under pattern to parse out different harmonics. It's very effective for that because it's tougher material, but it's also very thin. So harmonics need to be with thin materials so you don't cover too much space. To parse out a harmonic, you need to have a very localized point of contact, and this is very good for that. You can also manipulate it in a way that's better than a lot of the other materials I worked with before by twisting it a little so that it's a perfect alignment with the strings based on what harmonic you're trying to bring out and where it is on the instrument that you're preparing the note. In terms of avoiding hammers or beams. So it's a very good material. One drawback is that it has little bits of like specks, like black specks. It's hard to see, but like that. You can see on my thumb. It's tiny little specks. I tried cleaning off a lot of it, but it's hard to completely get rid of it because the leather has that, after you've cut it, the side of the leather. I'm not quite sure. I would love to talk to a leather expert about that to learn more about how to maybe avoid that or to know why it's there. Anyway, overall, very good. The second thing that I discovered that was interesting was the felt sheets. Preserving them as sheets, so not cutting them up like I did here, but leaving them really wide and putting them across the low copper wound strings of the piano. And then from there, you can put different things that rattle on top of the sheet so that they're protected from damaging the strings, but they're still being affected by the strings. And it's a form of preparing that could be very non-invasive to the low end of the instrument. I think it could yield some really interesting results if I can find a way to prop up these things, these screws and bolts, so that they can rattle more freely and make a bigger sound. Right now they rattle a little bit down like this, but you can barely hear it because the string, the piano string is much louder than these rattles. You want to try to have them match a little more so that you can hear it. But keeping them as sheets and playing with that sort of setup is really going to be an interesting world to look into in the future. And then finally, the t-shirt was just okay. It kind of is exactly what I expected it would be. And I suppose you could use it for just putting on top of the strings in different locations, but I found that putting it by the tuning pegs is most effective for my particular taste. You can also put it in the middle of the instrument or near the bridge. So that is the day. That wraps up the day, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're watching this.